Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to another week of Forcible News. So I apologize, this is not as nice as the news usually is. I wasn't feeling too great, so I worked on the article news and the summary of our interview with Jeff in article form. So I have those at least, so I won't have any images or this on this, but it's not really needed. I'm more so conveying information. But if you'd like images for some of the stuff I talk about and different things like that, just be sure to click the link in the description below, where there'll be a link to the Forcible News article, which also will link to the interview with Jeff summary article and different things like that. And because of that, I also apologize if there's any formatting weirdness with the articles. I'm trying to figure out what's going on with the website and why the formatting is weird, and you'll notice some of the pictures are vary in size. I don't know what's going on. I'm working on it though. I hopefully have it finished by next week. But yeah, so I'm going to go over the interview with Jeff, the bullet point summary for a lot of you who are wondering, since it was at 2 hours total. Although I still recommend watching the interview because there's a lot of little tidbits I'm not going to go over just because it's not worth putting here, but it's still good information. And also it's just fun to watch Jeff interact and stuff like that, but I'll put that at the end of the video since that's a little bit longer. So we'll start with the normal news. By normal, I mean, yeah, we'll see. So the big one, in case you guys missed it, didn't watch the interview or what have you, Eiji, the CEO of Force of Will, is no longer with the company. So this was something, if you guys were patrons, we had talked about it on our video on Patreon like 3 weeks ago or something like that, and we're waiting for confirmation of it to release it onto the channel. And so now it is official, so now we'll talk about it. Eiji is no longer with the company, and if you guys don't know, he was CEO, but he was also the founder and creator of Force of Will as well. This is all because of him. This was confirmed on his personal Facebook page, which was shared into the US Facebook group. And basically the post, he sort of talks about his love for the game and how he's sad to leave, but he wishes nothing but the best for the game and everyone participating in it. And he's it's basically just different versions of that going throughout his thing. Obviously it was a lot more nice, and I got sad reading it type of thing. But so he officially is no longer a part of it, hasn't been a part of it since before Jeff left, or technically around the same time. And we still don't know the specifics of what led to him leaving, although you can watch the interview with Jeff and maybe you can get some hints of what was going on there. And like I said, you can hear Jeff's thoughts and ours in that interview. Yeah, so it's very sad, and it is a little bit troubling since he was not only the creator and the head of the game, but it at least appeared like he was very personally involved in it and very passionate about what he did for the game and promoting it and just making sure everyone enjoyed it and sort of connected on a worldwide basis was always his sort of message. And this includes like the direction into New Valhalla and stuff like that was a product of him and Jeff working together and stuff like that. So yeah, I hope the best for him going forward, and we'll see how this impacts the game, if it's positive or negative or what have you going forward. Is only time will tell, really, I suppose. But yeah, so the next piece of news is regarding the Grand Prix that are sort of taking place around the world. So quite a few different events happened over the past several days, so I'll go over them one by one, and they all follow the same theme. So the first thing was in Europe. They had made a post, and they informed everyone that their remaining GPs, all of the remaining GPs, including the GP that was going to be happening in 2 weeks. Oh, my cat's face is like upside down. See that? Oh my goodness. All the remaining GPs, including the GP happening in just under 2 weeks from the announcement they did, would no longer have paid invites. This was not only unfortunate, but extremely short notice for such an announcement. And also still no official statement from the company regarding it or anything like that. It's just something that was put out there, which sucks, especially for the one that was 2 weeks away, because people have already planned trips to the GP most likely on the assumption that there is at least the possibility of a paid invite. Obviously not everyone would win it, but you still have that possibility. And so now that is gone. Following this was in Australia. Force of Will Australia made a post that the upcoming event, which was 2 days from the day that that was posted, would have one less unpaid invite. Then in the comments, people naturally were worried about the remaining 3 GPs, if they were even going to happen at all. And Force of Will Australia replied, letting them know that not to worry, those remaining GPs were still going to happen. However, all of them will have at least reduced unpaid invites, which is equally unfortunate. And some more information came from the comment section, where Force of Will Australia revealed a couple different things. They said things like Force of Will initially tried to take away one of the paid invites due to the company restructure, and they had to negotiate, and they ended up on an agreement that them as a distributor will pay half of the expenses in order to keep that fully sponsored invitation for the a second person to go. So that's them just paying out of pocket just to make sure that someone can go to Worlds, which is really nice of them, but really sucks just for the players and for that the company is doing that. And then in reply to someone else's comment, sort of being upset, they said that they had the same impression too when Force of Will informed them about it. They said basically, why reduce the unpaid invites? And they said it actually turns out that they hired a smaller venue this year for Worlds, therefore they had to reduce the amount of people who can physically come to Worlds, even if it's unpaid. So that's also unfortunate. So we're finding out that Worlds is going to be smaller this year on top of all this. Also, like in that comment, it was unfortunate to hear things like them literally saying that the negotiations were not easy and that they did not go according to plan, and they wish they could have done more, but they had to keep calm and start negotiating just to help minimize the reduction and stuff. So that's all sounds very unfortunate. Like the company is going out of its way to upset distributors and players alike, which really sucks, because those are very vital relationships, and at minimum you should just bite the bullet for this GP season. If you're going to reduce stuff, do it next season when people are actually expecting it and planning on it. And yeah, I won't go into too much, but so yeah, moving on this, we go to Taiwan. Now Taiwan posted on their page. I translated it through Google Translate, so it's a little bit rough, but essentially the main thing of it is they said, they're trying to stay optimistic. They said most of the operating team at Force Will is still in the company, but they did say that the number of invited contestants will be reduced. Like we mentioned earlier, it's a smaller Worlds venue, so that's a given now across the board. They did say the number of spots for Taiwan, Hong Kong, mainland China may all see reductions or any other changes, so to keep an eye out on that. And China for sure is going to see reductions in at least unpaid invites. So we're basically seeing a global reduction in invites, and a lot of people were saying, or at minimum hoping, that this sort of reduction and canceling GPs and different things like that was only going to be limited to the US, but now it turns out it doesn't matter where. Europe, Australia, Taiwan, China, all of it is being affected because it's just a worldwide scaling back of everything. And this is all happening, once again, I'll just say, with no statement, Facebook post, or anything from the company itself, though we'll keep you updated with any other updates regarding these events or the company. And as a side note, but still somewhat related, Jim from ARG posted in the Circuit Series page, shouting out everyone who attended and in the Vegas ARG, and letting us know he's working on the Eastern ARG events, as well as the ARG Invitational, which will have Force of Will, he confirmed. So this is really great news, but he did also mention that the Charlotte GP, which is happening mid-March, I believe the March 16th, that is awaiting discussion with Force of Will, the company, before he reposts and for sure hosts it. It sounds like, at least. So I'm not sure exactly what that means or possibly entails, but hopefully it's nothing too bad or possibly something good. If you guys don't know, there was some trouble at the ARG event with I think it was, I don't know if it was playmats or cards or something like that, got mixed up in the postal service and did not arrive at the event in time, but he did say in that post that he is going to be sending those out next week, I believe. So that's good to hear that he's at least staying on top of that. Speaking of the GPs though, the GP dates were announced for the US. And by announced, I mean they finally posted that page that was super glitching and definitely had nothing to do with any of this other stuff that we've been going over the past month. Which, you know, I had said from the beginning that that's not how websites work and something else was going on. So at least, yeah, it's all related to this in some fashion. But this time, obviously, it does not include GP Richardson or Collinsville because both of those were canceled. Robert had said that he was going to try and find replacements for them, but as of the posting of this video, the list currently does not have replacements. Obviously, that'll take time, so we'll see if anything comes of that. All of the events are New Frontiers, which is really good. I didn't want to have any weird sealed or cluster formats, at least for now. I don't think that's probably the best thing, although I was hoping for at least a Wanderer event. That would have been a cool thing to mix up, but all of them are New Frontiers. But an interesting thing to note is that every single event is a $30 entry fee. Now, this is $10 more than any of the GPs last year or any previous years in general. Usually it's about the $20 mark, even though all of these are WGPQs, so they're smaller, and not a single one of these includes a paid invite. So not sure why they're $30. It's the most expensive entry fee with the least amount of pricing that we'll ever see, but yeah, I'm curious why. It might have been something that was just part of the deal with the stores, but as soon as the paid invite went away, you can use that money you're saving to help offset some of the costs. So, like, you know, it's $1,500 or wherever for a paid invite for each of those WGPQs. If you just lower the cost, say 60 people attend, that's about $600 to put that $1,000 back down. That's assuming that the $10 was for. I don't know. I'm just speculating here. I don't know what's going on and why it's $10 more is the whole point. It might have something to do with it being hosted at stores, but as soon as the paid invites were gone, they should have done something to offset the cost. So it wasn't $30 anymore, but what are you going to do? On a little bit of better news, we do have a product reveal, sort of. So FOW did this is the first time they've ever done this. Obviously, with the new management change, things are going to be different, but they released the product release dates for all of the product for the rest of this year, up until February, I believe, of 2020. So each set is revealed. Not much to say other than that. So that's cool. A couple interesting things to note from the post is that first and second set at minimum for the new cluster each say they come with starter decks or release with starter decks. We don't know what this means, or if they're releasing like 5 starter decks and the remaining 5 on the second one, or if they're reprinting starter decks each time like they were supposed to this time around, or if they're releasing like 3 one time and then 2 another, kind of like how Caster Chronicles did. Not sure what that exactly means or entails, and obviously we probably won't find out for quite a bit of time, but just something interesting to note. And if it has to do with them actually restructuring so they did it how they're supposed to do it this time around, as far as keeping us stocked up on starter decks, that would be ideal, I think. But other big thing to note is that all of the release dates were pushed back. So you might have noticed that with this next set coming out was a different date than originally, and this cascades into all the remaining sets. They're just pushed back, I think, 1 month or 2 months, something like that. Whether this will affect Worlds or anything like that, as far as Worlds format or even the date that Worlds happens, we're not sure. But yeah, but an unfortunate thing that came out of this, and I don't know how no one planned for this, and hopefully this isn't going to become a consistent thing, but this upcoming set, Awakening of the Ancients, now, because of its new release, the pre-release lands on the same pre-release weekend as Magic the Gathering. So I've already seen posts of people who said their stores just aren't going to run Forcible pre-release now because they're running Magic and they just won't have room for it, and they're not going to set aside time or room for that when Magic is for sure going to pay the bills type of thing. So, which is understandable. So I'm not sure why this was decided to land on that pre-release weekend. Maybe they'll realize that pretty soon here and make adjustments as needed, but as of right now, that's how it is. Locals aren't going to run it. Some locals aren't going to run it because of that. I don't know if our locals will, because our locals is crowded during Magic the Gathering pre-releases. So odds are this might be the first time we don't do a pre-release, or at least, well, no, because we can't do it during the week, because I sure as heck can't do it during the week, and neither can Oscar. So without us, it probably wouldn't fire off. So yeah, that's going to suck. Yeah, that's really all I can say about that. The last thing in the news section before I move on to the summary of Jeff, I know this is going to be a little bit of a longer news, but this is the last piece of news, so if you want to leave after this, you can go on. And this isn't even really news, this is just sort of me going over stuff, and I'll apologize ahead of time both for this and that, that I might seem coming across negative or something like that, but you know, it is what it is, and so I'll explain that in just a minute. But last thing I wanted to say is that we still have no statement from the company. So as Jeff said in his interview, he no longer was able to make a scheduled statement like he originally had promised in his first post at the beginning of February. And we're now hitting 2 weeks since the company was going to release a statement the next day after Robert made his official statement. So next day, maybe it was a figure of speech for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or something like that. I bring this up because it's starting to become really just silly that we are approaching a month since Jeff and EG both left the company, yet we have yet to hear any word from the new management and the new company and stuff like that. We have almost had every single GP canceled in the US. We've had paid invites in the US stripped, and some paid invites stripped around the globe, as well as unpaid invites stripped around the globe. Worlds has now shrunk. The US head of tournaments stepped down. Like I mentioned, EG, the CEO, is no longer part of the company. Jeff, the global liaison, is no longer part of the company and communicating. And like little things like he said in the interview, like he's the only one, he's pretty sure, that has access to the Twitch channel, which is one of their methods of communicating with people. The judge program is currently frozen. Pre-releases are now being canceled due to their poor planning, and a bunch of more stuff. Obviously, that's happened over the past weeks. Yet through all this, not even like a one-sentence Facebook post saying like, hey guys, don't worry, we'll have a statement in the coming weeks. That's it. Just something. Let us know you guys are aware that people exist who play your game outside of Japan. Or I'm sure Japan is actually going against something similar with their GP being canceled. And as far as I can tell, it was never actually reinstated. And there's a lot of fear in Japan of what's going on over there. And so, yeah, I don't mean to sound pessimistic, but I personally think it's important to be honest about what is going on and what is, in my opinion, a sheer lack of awareness for any players and stores outside of their sort of company bubble. And I sincerely do hope that they fix this, and they still have time to fix it before more damage happens. And that just involves them actually communicating with us, letting us know what's going on, not to worry, or maybe they'll say something and it does cause worry, but us being informed, I think, is always very important. And that's why I bring this information to you guys, whether or not it's happy or not. I think it's always important to be informed about all situations, and that's why I do the news. I love doing the news weekly, and that's why I do the stuff like about Quinn and stuff about the stuff when Anton, that whole thing happened, and anything else that I just think it's best to be informed and to be honest about the situation. And right now it's just not, it has been very, very poorly executed, and it's one of the easiest things too, even with the dire situation that might have come out from it of EG stepping out and Jeff leaving. You still can easily spin this around and make it a better situation, but there's been seemingly no effort on their part to do that. So might come across pessimistic and negative, but obviously I very much hope that the game succeeds. and gets through this just fine, and definitely has the potential too. Hopefully this is the last sort of down video that would make for a while, because I just had to cover the news, and this is just happened to be the news. So yeah, so going into Jeff's interview summary, so here's the bullet points going over, and like I said, there's a link to this text version of this as well, or you can go watch the interview itself. But going over it, first question was, is EG going to be okay? And Jeff said that he'll be fine. He does have like the normal royalties and other financial things for leaving the company, and EG still wants Forceable to do well. And we'll sort of see what he does and goes from here. We asked if Jeff would still want to work for Forceable post the management change, and he said he would if the philosophy of the company stayed the same as it was before. As an aside, though, he was crazy busy working at the company. Not only was he the global liaison to the different countries, companies, and social avenues, communicating with players and different things like that, but he also did a lot more internally, since he was the only English speaker, including things like little things that we know publicly, like the ban list and balancing cards and stuff like that, but also a lot of stuff like he was planning out a cluster essentially, and a lot of internal work with meetings, all while doing his normal job of being a university professor. So that can lead to burnout. So there was also that factor to keep in. He said that he loves the game, but he doesn't want to work at the company if he can't do anything, if he's just like a face that doesn't actually have any power. He also doesn't want to if he doesn't understand them completely or doesn't agree with their philosophy. We asked if he would recommend the game to new players at this current time. He said his hopeful side says yes. The game still is fun and super cheap. As long as you enjoy it, that's the main thing that matters, regardless of any financial incentives. If you're looking for investments, probably not, but that isn't, in his opinion, a really good reason to get into a TCG to begin with. We asked what was going on with the starter deck availability, and he said it kills him, because he told them last year, about the same time of year, that they have to reprint those decks every single set, and they said that that's no problem. But he said problems ensued, and Jeff kept telling them over and over again that they have to get those decks out, that they're straight up just losing money by not printing these decks. But it seems they didn't pay much heed. And also, as an aside, he was told the rulers would be the willpower rewards, but he was not told it would only be half the rulers, only 5 rulers, not the full 10. And he found that out much later. We asked if with him gone, will themes like the pre-errata table flip and other overpowered cards be more likely to surface more often? And he said, unfortunately, yeah, the issue is nobody besides him had the power to really alter the power of the cards. Without him there to tell them what's strong and what's not, it will happen. They don't think too much about that. They're more focused on lore related flavor, etc., and less how the power affects the game. Their belief is in the fun and not necessarily the balance. His biggest concern is without him, he doesn't know how they'll do Buylist as well. He did everything and heavily pressured them to even do Buylist to begin with. Without him, those might have difficulty continuing. We asked when will the management changes take effect as far as power levels. He left after the third set of this cluster was already done, though that one already is very strong, he said. He only changed a couple cards in it, which include Sprout. He said he was hoping Sprout was going to be much weaker than what it turned out to be. But, you know, it still came out pretty strong. He said they were complaining, the company was complaining for a while, or people at the company, that Jeff was making cards too fair. The sales team thinks people just want to buy broken cards, and the sales team blames when a set, when say a Forceable set doesn't do well when sells, they attribute that to there not being super broken cards in it. He said the sales team loves cards like Sherry and Reflector Frame and Bahamut and different things like that, and they only focus on the initial reaction of people buying the sets. in order to get the cards, just so that they can win, because you have to have the cards in that set, otherwise you're just going to auto lose. If you're, like, the perfect example was the Sherry and Reflect Refrain format, where for the most part, if you're not playing Sherry or Reflect Refrain, you're going to lose. So by default, you have to buy the set in order to win. But they don't understand the future repercussions that such formats will bring. And like I always give the example of Reflect Refrain killed our locals, we brought it back, Pressure killed it, we brought it back, Sherry killed it, and now we finally brought it back from that. What it will survive another one of those, I don't know. Jeff's philosophy became letting them do what they want just a little bit, and then he would just ban whatever they did afterwards. So without him there isn't that first barrier of him checking the cards, and there's not that second barrier of him banning the cards. But he's a little bit hopeful still, because he still knows people behind the scenes that he can appeal to update the ban list if it becomes really bad. We asked if he would continue his original plan for an online tournament. He said he wants to. He had originally postponed it because that online GP had happened, which he felt it was everyone was pretty burnt out on that, and now he's just very busy with everything and catching up with essentially his life after Force of Will. He had fallen behind on some stuff, so he still wants it to happen. He's just not sure when at this point. We asked, do you think the game is still worth collecting in the West? And he said absolutely. No matter what happens, he still loves the artwork and he loves collecting and still thinks that it's worth it. Are you going to take a break from card games? He said probably. Force of Will was his baby, and after working with it and all that, and he said just at this point he's just tired. After everything's done for the past year and more, he was disappointed after leaving, but it does at least give him a chance to breathe and catch up on other things as well. We asked what happened to casters, and he said it was a different philosophy. Iji and Jeff also wanted to focus on Force of Will and sort of the world connecting to Force of Will, and Casters is more popular specifically in Japan and has a little bit of trouble connecting outside of that. And he also said Casters is a more focused game with harder deck building, etc. And so the companies working on it together weren't getting along super well, so yeah, they moved on. But he said it turns out they're actually going to be owned or run by the same company as Force of Will. He's pretty sure now. We asked then what happened to Architects, and he said they actually still want to make Architects. The design and artwork are all done for that first set. They just didn't have any plans beyond that for the future, which is why it was switched formats and different things like that. They were already short-staffed and decided they just needed to prioritize Force of Will. He said there was interest, but it was a bit hollow of an interest. And he said if it's not going to last, if it's a hollow interest and the set ends up, or the game launch ends up not being perfect. And he said back then they wanted to make 3 card games for 3 levels of players, such as casual level, normal level, and the more competitive level, which would fall under Architects, Force of Will, and Casters respectively, which Jeff disagrees with how card games work on that level, since these sort of levels of players exist in all card games no matter what. Oscar asked him what happened to the bestow mechanic, and Jeff said he actually was trying to bring back addition resonators, ones where you just straight up attach it to the resonator. He said he likes bestow, but he thought it was a little bit boring, and it was just artifacts from Magic, but in Force of Will. He prefers additions to have global effects, and bestow is pretty low on his like list. He said the cluster he was working on had, though he teased it, had milling, self-milling, burn, creature-based combos, and he was bringing back standby cards. So that's exciting. He doesn't know if they'll ever use that. He sent them his full layout and designs for that cluster, so we don't know if they'll use that, but we'll see. We asked if he knew about him leaving the company ahead of time, and he said he knew about the 3rd week of January. So if you guys don't know, we got the post from him on the Force of Will page, officially leaving February 1st. So to give you an idea, I don't know when exactly he left after that 3rd week, but at most that was like a 1-week notice. Iji, he said, was in a board meeting that Jeff was unaware of, and afterwards he had texted Jeff saying something terrible has happened, and then called and told him about Iji was leaving, and then Jeff said he wasn't sure if he was going to be affected, and that him having to leave was a shock, but also something he expected. And the analogy specifically that he used was that historically in a civil war, with the exception of the American Civil War, the losing side, you would kill everyone on the losing side. So in this case, Iji is on the losing side, and Jeff is part of Iji's team, so they just flushed everyone who was associated with Iji, which included Jeff. We asked, what does the game need to do if it wants to continue supporting the US? And he said they need to hire someone like him, or him specifically, to the Japanese company in some capacity, and not just as a face. They have to have the same power as he did before. The reason he had so much power before is because his relationship with Iji, the CEO, so whenever he needed something done, he could just go talk to the CEO and get it done. Everything Jeff did, he said he stands behind, and he is always informative and honest with everyone about what's going on, which is different than right now with where the new company is, the direction they're going and what they're doing, where they're doing things in secret and stuff like that. He said a good company that he can get behind is acknowledging mistakes, such as what he did in his video with Rudy, and being honest. And he hopes you recognize that in order for the American market to succeed, they need to sort of not be secretive and actually communicate. And lastly, I asked him his thoughts on the canceled GPs and revoked invites. He said the person running the company right now doesn't think very highly of the paid invites or any of that in general, and thinks it just eats up money. He doesn't see it as PR, he sees it as just pure cost with zero benefit. And Jeff gave examples of experiences he's had at stores around the world that the locals sell more product and bring in more players when events happen around their area, which is one of the reasons they were trying to build up more events just around the US and around the globe. He said specifically, since the two GPs that were canceled were purely run by force of will, they were marked as pure cost and therefore cut, unlike the WGPQs where it's only, partially run by force of will. And he said, which is probably why he and Rob were cut as well, because they were just seen as extra finances that could be cut. So yeah, if you want to hear our full thoughts and responses to all that, you can watch the interviews as well. So yeah, thanks for sticking around for the longer news. If you guys stuck around the whole time, let me know in the comments below and let me know your thoughts on all this. Once again, like I said, hopefully this is the last of the sort of downer videos we do for a while, now that the bulk of the news has passed of all the different things happening. So I feel like it can only go up from here. We'll see. Thanks you guys for tuning in as always, and we'll see you guys next week.